and welcome back to the Yellow Dresser. I am Nathalie Michelle, and today's topic is sewing basics. So this is the second video in my Fashion Design 101 playlist series, whatever you want to call it. And I'm super excited to bring this video to you guys because it's very important. I've got a whole long lineup for you guys, so I'm going to make this as simple and short as I possibly can because I have a tendency to accidentally make my videos a little too long. So we're going to dive right in, keep the openings short, sweet, and simple, and let's get to it. Alright, so the first topic I want to cover is tools. Sewing tools are a necessity, honestly. Like, you cannot sew or be a seamstress and not have the proper sewing tools, and especially as a beginner, these are the tools that are going to help you, well, begin to sew. So I actually have them all sprawled out behind me if you want to like squint your eyes and look at them. But the first thing that I wanted to cover was fabric scissors. You're going to need a pair of sturdy fabric scissors. Now these actually came with my new sewing machine that I just got. I'll say which sewing machine I have later on in the video, but these are very, very nice. I also have these fabric scissors. These are Fiskars. I do like Fiskars. They're a little bit cheaper fabric scissors. These are a little more, as you can tell, more expensive fabric scissors. They're metal handle. They're really sturdy. They're heavier, way heavier than these. I would suggest getting yourself a good steady pair of fabric scissors, and then don't use them for anything but fabric. I will come after you if you use them for paper. The second one is a seam ripper. They look like this, and then you just pop this thing out and you have your seam ripper. These are super, super nifty, and they're a must-have when you're beginning because you're going to struggle, and I mean you're going to struggle with making perfect seams. So get a seam ripper. They're gonna save your life when you make a mistake and you need to take it out. The second thing is, of course, pins. This is my pin cushion. I actually need a different one, a new one. I think I want to get a magnetic pin cushion because it's like falling apart. And these, like, if I put them in wrong, they stab me. But anywho, these pins are very nice. I got them from Wawak. I will put that link to the website below. I love Wawak. I wish I knew about them sooner. They're a great sewing resource. They have literally anything you could want there when it comes to sewing supplies. They're just fantastic, and everything's like reasonably priced, and you get very nice quality. But these are actually glass tip pins, and I do recommend getting glass tip pins because you can iron over them, especially as a beginner. Not having to worry about your pins melting on your fabric is nice, so I would suggest getting glass tip pins. I do have a few plastic ones, which I don't actually use very much anymore. I also do suggest getting a rotary blade. If you get a rotary blade, of course you're going to have to get a rotary mat because you can't use this on regular surfaces. This is a wonderful tool for cutting things out. It just makes things so much more simple, so much better, and I would die without my rotary blade. I actually want to get like a little one with a smaller blade for cutting like fine corners and stuff, because the bigger ones actually can be rather difficult if you have got a sharp edge or something. So I would do suggest getting a big one and a little one, and this is actually the same brand as my other scissors. I suggest getting a gridded ruler like this for a beginning ruler. This one is 18 inches long, and for a beginner this is plenty long. You're not going to need something much longer than this, especially since you're just starting out sewing. You're probably not making your own patterns. Actually, that's how I started out sewing, because I didn't know how to read patterns, which I'm going to do a video on that as well. So when it's up, it's going to be right up here. But this is a gridded ruler. They're super nice. You can see right through them. So if you have any like mistakes or you want to see something that you're marking, plus they're really nice for adding seam allowance or altering patterns as well. Recommend getting one of these. The next item is tailoring chalk. Now this is I really suggest getting either tailoring chalk or disappearing ink pens for fabric, because these are going to help you mark all your notches on your fabric and anything else that you need to mark on your fabric. They're easy to take off. They come in separate colors. I also got these from Wawak. They were pretty cheap. Again, Wawak, love them. I have some wax fabric. Get yourself some disappearing ink pens or heat erase pens, and then some tailoring chalk. And you don't need all three. If you just want to buy one, you can just buy one. The next thing I do suggest getting is a tape measure. This was actually a gift for me that I just recently got when I taught sewing lessons for a little while, and they gave me a going away presents for when I moved to Miami, and this is one of them, and I absolutely love it. If I like show you closer, my cat got to it, so now he has little claw marks in it, and I was very upset with him. But this is a wonderful tool. I would get a tape measure. You don't need one this fancy. I have like 3 that are just like regular tape measures. But this one is nice, so if you can find one like this, I do suggest it. So, and the last item is an iron. I have it back here. I don't really want to pick it up. This one is actually not the best iron. This is just a Sunbeam iron for a beginner iron. This one is just fine. It shuts off after a little while if you're not using it, so that's actually a really nice feature if you're a beginner, because you might forget that you left your iron on. So this is a very nice tool. You will need an iron if you plan on sewing. You need an iron. You need to get used to ironing, because your garments will turn out exceptionally better if you have an iron. Alright, so we have covered the basic tools you will need to get started for sewing. So we are going to go into sewing machines, and the first thing that I want to cover with this is some basic tools that I think beginners need to have in their sewing machines for them to really get used to sewing and to help them become a better sewer. With that said, the first one is a top load bobbin. I actually have a top load bobbin in my machine. My machine is not a beginner machine, but I would not get a machine that has, my cat's just bumped my camera. I would not, personally not buy a machine that did not have a front or top load bobbin, because I absolutely hate front load bobbins. They are very, for a beginner, it's just an unnecessary thing that you really need to learn. Most machines now have a top load. So I do suggest getting one that does have top load, because the front load ones are a little bit more complicated, and we're keeping it simple for beginners. The next thing I do suggest, and that most sewing machines do have, is a free arm. A free arm is just where you can like take out the little front portion so you can like put things underneath your sewing machine while you're sewing. Helpful tool. Most machines, I don't think I've ever seen a machine that did not have a free arm, unless maybe it's an industrial machine. They probably wouldn't have a free arm, but again, there are industrial machines, which I don't need to go into that. Another thing I do suggest getting for a sewing machine for a beginner is an extension table. It really just helps you keep your fabric laying straight, and it's a nice large surface for you to work with. So an extension table for your machine, recommend. It's super nice, especially if you plan on doing quilting or anything like that. I would get an extension table. And if you don't have like a big area to work with and you're making skirts or shirts or something, having an extension table will really help you keep the fabric where it needs to be, so recommend. One of the things that I do actually recommend as well is a speed control option for beginners. Not very many machines actually have the speed control option, but I did find some machines that I will mention later on in this video portion that have a speed control. It's like a little lever that you can just slide back and forth. When I was doing sewing lessons, it really helped my sewing students when they had speed control, because you can actually control the speed of your machine without a speed control, but you have to like watch your pressure on your presser foot, which for beginners can be difficult. So I do recommend getting speed control, especially if you've never used a sewing machine before. If you hit that pressure foot, it's gonna go, guys. It's going to go. So I would really either tap it slowly, or I would get a machine with a speed control. And then the last thing I recommend for beginners is no touchscreen sewing machines. I know that they're really big right now, like the LED screen where you can like slide. I do not recommend those for beginners. I think they complicate the sewing machine process, especially if you're beginning and you're just learning how to use a machine. I feel it's an unnecessary complication for a beginner. It's just a lot of times there's just a lot of extra buttons you gotta push, whereas if you just get a regular machine, all you do is click the button and that's it. You click the button and you're sewing that stitch, whereas a LED screen, usually there's a few extra steps that need to be done. All right, and we're gonna dive right into the sewing machines that I recommend for beginners. Not all of these machines have a control speed on them, so if you are wanting a control speed on them, I will make sure I put a little control speed icon down with the machines. I will list the price. I will show you what they look like in the little corner down here. Before I start mentioning these machines, I do want to say that I have one machine from each of the top sewing companies. So I have Brother, Singer, Janome, Juki, Viking, and Baby Lock all listed here. Those are like the top of the line sewing machines. So with that said, let's get to listing these machines. The Singer Fashion Mat. Now, if you ask me about Singer, I'm going to tell you not to get a Singer. I have had all my machines I've had in the past were Singer, and I just always ended up very disappointed with them. I think the quality of their machines has gone down over the years. Just a personal opinion. Other people have had great experiences with Singer, but me personally, I just feel like they're more of a crafting machine than for a type of machine that you're going to be using if you are watching my channel. So I did include it though because it is the least amount, it is the cheapest machine that I could find for a beginner. It's a $149 for this machine. It did have all the features that I thought were great for beginners, and if you are on a budget, I do suggest this machine. Especially if you're not sure if you want to or what you want to do with sewing, this is a great one. And I've heard actually great things about this machine, so I did want to include it for my budget conscious watchers. But with that said, all these machines are actually decently priced machines. I'm not listing you guys like $500 machines. I do have one close to $500, but they're all under that. The next machine and the second cheapest is the Brother CS7000X. This machine runs for $199 and it has all the features that I mentioned. All of these actually have all those features, and this machine actually has 70 different stitches in it, which is actually a lot for a beginner sewing machine. All of these machines actually don't even have that close to that many stitches. So this machine has a lot of stitches. The next machine that I wanted to mention was the Viking H-Class E10 sewing machine. This machine is a wonderful sewing machine for beginners. It has 21 stitches and all of the different things that I mentioned, and it is $279, bringing it at the third most or least expensive machine I am listing. The next one is the Juki HZL353ZRC compact machine. This machine actually is a smaller machine, so if you're not looking for a big, heavy, bulky machine, this one is for you. It runs at $329, which brings it at the fourth least expensive machine I am listing. Again, it has all the features that I am previously mentioning, and it has 21 stitches. The next one that I am mentioning is the Janome Magnolia 3718. This one I've heard is a great machine for beginners. It runs at $329 and it has under 50 stitches. So it doesn't actually list the exact amount of stitches, which I thought was weird, but it has under 50 stitches. And the last machine that I wanted to list was Baby Lock. I'm a sucker for Baby Lock. I'm very much biased towards Baby Lock, I'm not gonna lie. I have used their machines. My aunt actually, she actually has a YouTube channel, so I'll put it down in the description if you want to give it a look at. But she owns all her machines are Baby Lock, and I absolutely adore all of her machines. Two of my machines are Baby Lock machines, and I love them both. With that said, the Baby Lock Zeal sewing machine is the one that I want to mention. It runs for $449. It has 25 stitches as well, and honestly, the Baby Lock Genuine Collection, all of the machines in there will be great beginner machines. Not gonna lie, I was looking at them and I really had a hard time picking one out. But they're all fabulous machines. Now, with that said, the only machine that I just with that said, all of the machines that I just listed, only one of them had speed control, and that was the Brother machine. So I'm going to list a few more machines that do have speed control if that is what you're looking for. The Janome 8077 runs for $650. Brother XR 9500 PRW $349 is what it goes for. And guys, some of these machines have like ridiculous names, which is why I have my notebook up here, because I'm not going to remember what these names are. And then the last one is Singer 7258, and that runs for $299. Those three machines have speed control if that is what you're looking for. If I mention that feature and you're like, yes, I need that feature. So those are all the machines that I recommend as a beginner, and I have heard or have personal experience using those machines, so I know they are good machines, and I know that they're going to do what you need them to do, especially as a beginner. Now that I've covered sewing machines, I did actually want to go over some other machines. I know as a beginner you won't be using these machines just because you're going to be overwhelmed by using just a sewing machine, but I did want to mention that there are actually other types of machines that is used for sewing, and those are sergers, cover stitches, blind hem, embroidery machines, and of course industrial machines, which I will not get into in this video. So yeah, I will be doing a future video on sewing machines, and when it is up, it'll be right here. But right now, I don't think beginners need to worry about any other machines besides those machines that beginner sewing machine. Alright, so I want to talk about stitches next. So I brought you over to my machine. This is my machine. Oh, this is my machine, guys. Baby Lock Soprano right here. Oh, she's fabulous. I love her. I really highly recommend Baby Lock machines, guys. I love their machines. They're so good. I love them. But anyway, she's fabulous, and these are the stitches that I wanted to cover. So we're going to go over the stitch first. So this is just a plain stitch, as you can see, nothing special. This is just the straight stitch that you use on your machine. You can press your seam allowance open or to the side, whatever makes you happy. The second seam I wanted to tell you guys about was the French seam. So this would be this one right here. So this is what it looks like on the other side. And I'm using black thread so you guys can see what I'm doing. So this is the French seam right here. And then the next one is the flat felt. So the flat felt, also known as the jean seam, is this one. It has that iconic jean feel to it. And typically this is a seam that you would use with heavyweight fabrics. The French seam right beside it right here, you would use this for lightweight fabrics. So don't use this one for heavy fabrics and don't use this one for light fabrics. It's not going to be pretty. And then the last one is a stretch stitch right here. So you can see that it zigzags up like this. That is a stretch stitch specifically for like knits and stuff. It's the equivalent of the straight stitch just for knit fabrics. And then the last thing that I actually haven't done yet, which I will do right now, is the buttonhole stitch. So my machine and most machines have multiple different kinds of buttonhole stitches, but this is like the most basic one. This is what it looks like. You rip these open with seam rippers, and that when you do a buttonhole, you do need to have some sort of stabilizer, or it needs to be pretty thick fabric. It has to be sturdy. It won't work on lightweight fabrics. You will not be happy with the results. So you're going to need a few layers of fabric, or you're going to need interfacing or something to help strengthen the fabric behind the button foot. Otherwise it's gonna fall apart or it's not gonna turn out very pretty. So these are the basic stitches that I wanted to show you guys. We have the basic straight stitch, the French seam, flat lock or jean seam, the stretch stitch, and the buttonhole stitch. So let's move on to the next category. So now that we have covered all the basic machines, tools, stitches, you're probably wondering, where do I get patterns and fabric? So I have a few resources that I'm going to list for fabric and patterns because I know that maybe as a beginner you don't want to necessarily spend too much money on this stuff. So I found some resources that are relatively cheap. They have a nice quality fabric, and then all of the pattern resources that I list right here are actually all free websites for patterns. So of course you can get fabric from places like Joann's or Hobby Lobby. Just depends on what you want. Joann's has a lot of knits. There's not really a lot of like regular woven fabrics at Joann's unless you're in like the cotton section, which if you're a quilter, that would be a great place, or if you like working with knits, which I will get to that topic later. And then Hobby Lobby just has really like cotton prints as well. So if you're quilting or you're just starting out, I actually do recommend starting with cotton blends of some sort because it's the easiest fabric to work with. But some other websites that you might be interested in that do have fabric is fabric.com. Fabric Wholesale Direct is one of my favorites. You can get very high quality fabric for relatively cheap, so I do recommend you check them out. They're one of my favorite places to get fabric actually. And then Mood Fabrics is a great one if you're looking for designer or really pretty aesthetic fabrics. Mood Fabrics is great for that. If you're looking for sustainability fabrics, I do actually have some links for you guys. And again, all of the links that I am listing in this video will be down in the description, so be sure to check that out. And the links that I have for sustainable fabrics is the Offset Warehouse and then Merchant and Mills. They have sustainable fabrics and beautiful colors and patterns that you will love. So for patterns, I did actually want to mention that I have patterns, so be sure to check those out. I have free and I have patterns you can buy. It just depends on the patterns. So like the more basic patterns I have are for free, but the more complicated ones that took me more time, you have to buy those. So be sure to check out my website for some patterns if that is what you're interested in. So yeah. But some other pattern websites that you can check out where you can get some patterns for free is, again, actually Mood Fabrics. They have free patterns for you to use. They're very modern, chic patterns. Of course, they actually have male and female patterns if you are one of my male seamstresses out there. Actually, what do they call male seamstresses? Seamstresses. What is it? Does anybody know what a male seamstress is called? Because there has to be another name for it besides, maybe it's a tailorer? Tailorer? That sounds right, because tailoring is really like a men's thing that women brought into the women's fashions. So I don't know. Somebody let me know in the comments what you call a male seamstress. And then if you're interested in corsets, I actually do have a great resource for you. She has free patterns. I've actually used her patterns in the past. I have one actually cut out somewhere around in my apartment, but her corset pattern link or Instagram or website as well is called Arania Black Corsets. I will put her website in the description as well. She has free corsets, and now these are not fashion corsets. I would like to mention that these are real corsets, like very, very real corsets. And actually her patterns don't have instructions, but she does have videos and instructions on her YouTube channel how to make these. So I would suggest maybe once you have a little more sewing experience under your belt, you would look at these patterns. But if you are interested in sewing corsets specifically, I wanted to mention this because corsets are coming back, which actually I adore, because I actually think corsets are very pretty and very girly, so I love them. And then some other resources for some patterns are peppermintmag.com, fabric.com and sew.easy.com. And then if you are a man, again, when you're one of my men seamstresses watching this video, I have another website for you to find some male free patterns, and the website is lifesosavory.com. So again, all of the links that I am mentioning in this video are down in the description, so if you want some easy access to them and to some of the resources and tools and machines that I have mentioned, I will also have a link down there for you to click on. So before I end this video, I actually did want to give you guys a few tips that I have learned over the years, or that I wish somebody would have told me before I started sewing. I have been sewing since elementary school. My grandparents actually got me into sewing, and they taught me a little bit, but they didn't like teach me for very long. They kind of went through a lull where they didn't sew as much. And so they're back. Well, one of my grandparents is back sewing quilts. However, I did have to teach myself most of this stuff. And again, I did not know how to read patterns at this point, so I really just made up my own stuff. So I'm very much self-taught, but these are a few of the tips or different things that I wish somebody would have told me, because they would have been very helpful. Alright, the first thing that I did want to mention is, this is probably very basic, and me saying this is, you're probably gonna be like, well, duh, but honestly, some of this stuff is things that you don't really think about until somebody like tells you, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's probably important that I should think about this more. So there are different kinds of bobbins, and that I know sounds ridiculous, but there are. My sewing machine takes class 14. I think they're class 14 bobbins, but there are different kinds of bobbins. You need to make sure you are getting the right type of bobbin for your machine, or your machine will not run correctly. Lots of machines, like every company has their own bobbins you can buy, but in your instruction manual for when you buy your sewing machine, it will tell you what class of bobbin you need to get. So be sure that you are getting the right bobbin, or your machine will not run as well as it should. Another thing that I wish I would have known was, there are different kinds of thread out there, and I know that sounds really like duh, but when you're beginning sewing, you're not really thinking about like your thread content. You're just going to the store and you're picking out all-purpose thread, which if you're picking out all-purpose thread, that's absolutely fine. I use all-purpose thread all the time. However, my suggestion for you is that you match your thread weight to your fabric weight. So if you're using a lightweight fabric, you should be using a lightweight thread, because I think that's common sense right there. But as well as that, matching your thread content to your fabric content is actually good. It can really help like your stitching process and things with tension and everything. So I would suggest, if you're working with cotton fabric, you get cotton fiber thread. If you're working with polyester, get polyester thread. If you're working with silk, get silk thread. And again, if you are beginning sewing, you shouldn't be working with anything but like cotton blends or synthetic blends. Do not work with knits. Please do not work with knits, guys. You will regret your life if you do that. Knits are very hard to work with, and as a beginner, there's just so many different complications that come with working knits. You should not be messing with those right now. I still hate working with knits, and I have been sewing for many years. I actually honestly avoid working with knits when I can, because I hate them. There are different kinds of sewing needles, which probably is also one of the ones that's like, duh. But I actually didn't know this at first, so I would just use the universal needle, which it's called a universal needle because it's universal. However, I do suggest changing your needle with the different type of fabrics. So like there's ballpoint needles, there's leather needles, there's titanium needles, there's top stitch needles, all of these different needles that help you just do something differently that will help it turn out better. I know I kind of trampled over my words right there, but I really hope my point was made and got across to you guys, because again, all of these little extra steps and tools, especially as a beginner, I think it is very important to kind of like do what you need to do to make your garment look as pretty as possible, because as a beginner, your garments aren't going to look pretty. Like, let's just be honest, they're not going to look like the best well-made constructed things out there. So doing the little things that can kind of help make them look better, I feel like are very important as a beginner, because You can get really down if you make something and it just did not turn out right. Like, it can make you not want to do it again, and I don't want you guys to not want to sew again. So doing these little things can really help you elevate your designs and your construction. Which actually brings me to two other things that I wanted to cover for tips. One, as a beginner, use lining whenever you can. Guys, I would always recommend a beginner to use lining because it hides all the mess, so you don't have to look at it. I still use lining, one, because most of the things I like to make I have to use lining, and two, as a beginner, not seeing all the mess that you created when you're first starting sewing can really help you get more confident in your sewing and actually like make you feel better wearing something that you made, because then you don't have to look at all the mistakes or different things or all the things you had to pull out to make it work. So I do suggest using a lining when you are beginning, and also make sure your thread tension is right. I really hate working with thread tension, which is actually why I got my baby lock machine right over there, because I don't have to really worry about it very much anymore because it has automatic threading tension. So it's just something that I never liked doing. So you have to make sure that you are using the correct tension for what you are doing. So obviously if you're using heavier fabrics, your tension is going to go up, and if you're using lighter fabrics, your tension is going to go down. And it's really a fine line with that. You really just have to play and use scraps of your fabric to find the perfect tension, which is really annoying, which is why I love my baby lock machine over there. Now this one is another one that you're gonna be like, duh. But be careful where you put your hands, and that I mean that, because I sewed through my finger, my aunt has sewed through her finger, both of my grandparents have sewed through their finger. Like, I feel like it's almost a rite of passage for a seamstress to sew through her finger, because it just happens when you're beginning sewing or when you're really getting into sewing, and it's just a slip up that can be easily avoided. My number one rule for how to avoid this is whenever you are not sewing, take your foot off the presser foot, which I know seems like very duh as well, but when you're sewing, you're not gonna think to take your foot off your presser foot, and all it takes is a little bit of your foot to relax enough when you're messing with your needle and fabric for your needle to snap, and you'll get your finger. It's not fun. There's a lot of blood, and if you're squeamish, please make sure you take extra precaution to take your foot off of your pedal, because I have sewn through my finger. It wasn't a bad sew through. It went through like this, so it only got skin, but my aunt, it went straight through her nail. Yes, the sewing machine has enough power to sew through your nail. So please be careful where you are placing your hands, and be careful when you are not sewing. Your foot should be off of your presser foot. And the very last thing, which I have mentioned a few times, is knowing how to read a pattern is a game changer. I did not know how to read a pattern, and I never learned how to read a pattern until I started going to college for fashion design. So I went through all of my years of sewing just like winging it, because I just didn't know how to read a pattern. I owned a few patterns that I actually tried to read, and I just didn't understand half of the words they were telling me. Like, it just, sewing patterns is like its own language. Like, legitimately, it's its own language. So I really suggest you sit down and find a great resource for how to read a pattern. I'm pretty sure I already mentioned this, but I do or will have a video on how to read a pattern, and I actually do have a blog post on my website on how to read a pattern as well. So if my video is not out, there is a link down there for you to be able to find that blog post for you to how to read a pattern, because it is important, especially as a beginner. Most beginners start by using patterns. I'm just an oddball. I did not start using patterns. So recommend you know how to read a pattern, one, because you're going to learn a bunch of sewing terminology that you won't know otherwise, And 2, it's just really helpful to know how to read a pattern. So thank you so much for watching this video. I know I covered a lot of information, and I know that I mentioned I have a few other videos that can expand on this topic. If you're really wanting to watch them, please either click them because they will be down in the watch next area of my description, or if you already clicked on them up there, thank you so much for supporting my channel. Give this video a like, or not, I keep saying like, you've probably realized this if you've watched more of my videos and gotten to the end of them. I always say like, but it's thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, hit the little notification bell so you won't miss another video. I will see you guys all in the next video, and thank you. Thank you for watching. Say hi, Poofy. Hi, Poofy. You're so fluffy. Fluff, 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 fluff. He's pretty, guys, but there's nothing going on up here. Is your Fluffy? Yeah. He's brain dead. Oh, but I love him so much.